another impromptu video because TikTok will keep pissing me off. Hi, welcome back to my channel. It's Mex here, where I normally talk about media and media that catches my interest. But today, I just wanted to go on a bit of a tangent about this term that's been making its rounds on TikTok. I think it's been making its rounds on TikTok for at least a year, and how I think personally while it has its points, it's also just pretty fucking stupid. So what the fuck am I talking about? There is this term that you'll commonly see on TikTok called zoochosis. You're probably thinking to yourself, what exactly is zoochosis? Zoochosis is a term that is used for animals that are kept in enclosure, and basically the animals start exhibiting like very anxious behavior, pacing up and down for hours on end, over grooming themselves, just a lot of repetitive behaviors as a sense to like self-soothe because they're in captivity. Now, the thing about that term to begin with is that that term is not scientifically used. Yeah, zoologists don't use the term zoochosis like at all. In fact, the term was coined by a anti-zoo, anti-conservation, anti-sanctuary company. I forgot its name. I can probably look it up, but they're very anti-zoo, anti-anything, and it's like, I can understand being anti-zoo, anti-sanctuary, and conservationist. A bit reductionary, since that is quite literally used to, like, help animals and rehabilitate animals and, like, make sure that they can get back to the wilderness. And they also help animals who probably aren't really fit for living in the wilderness, like animals that might have certain disadvantages, are helped through sanctuaries and stuff to keep them safe. So like sanctuaries and stuff have their good qualities, even if they're a bit questionable sometimes. So you're probably thinking to yourself, well, Max, you don't like the zoochosis term because it's used incorrectly for like animals. Not just that. Zoochosis has been making its rounds on TikTok for, I would say, about a year, in the terms of, humans aren't living like how we're supposed to because of like, capitalism stuff. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm a bit of a socialist. But like, the way it's used is a bit, very strange, I would say. The whole premise basically that a lot of people on TikTok have is that human beings are experiencing a type of global zoochosis where we're all, like, in a sense, doing these things that no human is supposed to be doing, and that we're just a part of this, like, thing. Like, basically, the reason, like, humans have all of these issues that, again, and this is why it pissed me off, that we never had is because of this whole like capitalism stuff. Now listen, I'm not gonna dick ride capitalism. Like I just said, I'm a bit of a socialist. However, I do think that this whole zoochosis discussion has a lot of issues.
I'm convinced that we all have zoochosis and the world is not ready to talk about it. If you don't know what zoochosis is, it's basically a form of mental illness that animals get from being in a zoo, from having a repetitive lifestyle that is not natural to them. Now, animals don't show any of this sort of behavior out in the wild. This is primarily only to animals that are kept in zoos. Sometimes they will circle the same place. They will just do behavior that they don't do in the wild. And what do most humans do? Basically live in a zoo. Everyone's been forced to work jobs that they don't want to work in. And it even starts as young as our kids. We send them off to school to literally learn all day in an unnatural environment to them. It's literally programming our mind a specific way. And now I believe we are all suffering mentally because of this. I believe things like anxiety and depression are different symptoms to the same mental illness, because we are not meant to be living this way.
Like a lot. One of my biggest qualms with zoochosis is that it quite literally says, like many people say this about zoochosis straight up, that mental illness wouldn't exist if capitalism didn't exist. Now, I'm not gonna lie and say that certain mental illnesses cannot be exacerbated because of capitalism, because that's very true. If you're worried about when you're gonna get your next meal, yeah, that's gonna cause some anxiety. If you don't have enough money to like pay for your house or buy food, that causes a lot of anxiety and depression. However, there are people who have anxiety and depression who don't have to worry about that types of things. There are people who have many mental disorders that don't stem from capitalism. Sure, they can be exacerbated by it because it's like, oh, well, I can't afford my medicine for my mental illness. Like, I've literally seen this woman on TikTok. She was a former therapist, and thank God former, because imagine having her as one. Dear God. Former therapist, and her whole thing is like, yeah, no mental illness would ever exist if, like, capitalism didn't exist, including schizophrenia. As someone who actively had a grandpa who had schizophrenia, let's not put that message out there. That, I don't think people realize, is a very dangerous message to put out. That like, oh, you would never have to like take your pills, and these pills are trying to pacify you. You're just, exhibiting all these symptoms from living in a capitalist system. Hold the fuck up, babe. You're gonna get somebody fucking killed with that shit. I'm gonna beat your ass in a parking lot. As someone who had a schizophrenic grandpa, who quite literally, like, that's the thing a lot of people don't realize. Schizophrenia is genetic. Yeah, schizophrenia. In fact, a lot of mental disorders are genetic. Bipolar, genetic. Anxiety can be genetic. Depression can also be quite genetic. Lots of mental disorders can be passed down genealogically. Like, this isn't like some new thing. Schizophrenia, very common to be passed down through genetics. In fact, it's very common for third generations to get schizophrenia, aka me. So I gotta be on the lookout when I hit my 30s, because that's usually when it peaks. So, lucky me, I swear to God, my mom's side has the most shittiest genes ever. Anyway, that's what mainly pisses me off about the argument. It's like, yeah, I can understand where it comes from, because it's like, at the one point, yeah, capitalism exacerbates mental illness. At the same time, though, mental illnesses have existed way before capitalism. We just didn't really have the words and the terms to describe them. It's like when people say that cancer never existed until, like, I guess, the 20th century, which, like, no, we've had cancer. We just didn't really have a name for it. It was just like, she's fallen ill. That ill was cancer. There was a lot of, like, people who died of, like, cancer and stuff. Like, it's not some, like, it was one of those things where it's like, we just didn't have a name for it, which is like a lot of mental illnesses. We can look at like historical records and see hints and notions of these like mental disorders, like people who thought that they were God, people who thought this, people who thought that, like lots of like popular and rich people. Like, delusions in and of itself are very indicative of the time that you're living through. Like, for example, in the modern era, a very common delusion that people have is that the government is watching them. As opposed to if we went back in the day, a very common delusion would be thinking that you were God. That's just a very common delusion. Like, again, depending on the time period, depending on what's like going on, very common for those types of delusions to like come through and be exacerbated through stress and things. Now, again, I'm not fully against the whole but it's also, I feel like, comes to like the two things. The one, like I just discussed, the whole mental health thing. You can tell this is an unscripted video because I'm sure my thoughts are all over the place. Everyone is like confused as fuck as what I'm saying. But like, I hope it's making a little bit of sense, like just a tiny bit of sense. Like, yeah, the whole mental health thing. But I think another thing that I'm kind of getting from this is this romanticization of like back in the day, back when our ancestors were doing, all of this. I think a lot of people have this misconstrued notion that like back in the day, all our ancestors did was pick berries and eat fruit and fuck. No. Not one fucking bit. I mean, don't get me wrong, they were picking berries, but like, they also were like dying very easily, very commonly, and doing a lot of other fuck ass shit. Listen, this isn't to diminish older civilizations. I think there's like, when it comes to older civilizations, there's a lot of like misconstrued notions because a lot of people, they don't pay attention to history. They don't. They really don't. The misconstrued notions I commonly see, living back in the day was simpler. It most definitely was not. It really was not. You probably, like, here's the thing. You're working a 9 to 5. 9 to 5s, I think, need to be dimmed down to at least like a 9 to 2. Because let's be honest here, if you work an office job, with the technology we have nowadays, honestly, the work should be cut down to like 5 to 6 hours. But that depends on the type of work you do, because I'm sure someone who works at Wall Street probably actually does need to put in those 8 hours. I don't know what they do on fucking Wall Street, but I'm sure it's something. Maybe. I don't know. There's some office work that like actually takes like 8 hours to do, but there are other office jobs where it's like, you could probably get to work done in 6 hours. I work an office job right now. I work at a call center, so it's like people call all throughout the day. We open on Saturdays. That Saturday, boring as hell. It was literally just any call that I got was mainly just me calling people to remind them, like, hey, pay your mortgage, and then end the call. I got like 2 calls of people who actually needed help. I don't even think most people know that we open on Saturdays. Anyway, that tangent aside, this almost romanticization of like older time periods that like, oh, well, it was just so much easier back then. Not really at all. Or that, oh, well, we just didn't have this, that, and the other. And like, again, this misconstrued notion that living back in the day meant like picking berries, laying about, and doing nothing. And it's like, no, you were still doing some sort of work, and the work probably took even longer because the technology that you have was pretty less. I mean, don't get me wrong, you probably spent a lot more of your day a bit more productively, but still, it took you a longer time to do things. Like, it's like when people say, I should just be laying about, eating fruit, making art, and it's like, honey, being an artist was a hard thing to do back in the day. In fact, it was even harder back in the day because half the shit was inaccessible. Like, don't get me wrong, being an artist even now in the modern day is hard, but like, at least it's accessible. Most people couldn't even get paper. Paper was a luxury. It took a lot of time to make paper. Now we make paper like it's nothing. Like, paper is not even $1. I could literally go to an Office Max right now. It's probably going to be 50 cents to get like 2 packs. Explaining that to someone like even 100 years ago would be fucking insane. Like, even they would be kind of mesmerized by that. Because again, it took a long time to make paper. Paper was expensive. You couldn't just waste paper like that. But that's also not to diminish like older civilization, because we learned a lot of things from other civilizations. And I also think another thing that a lot of people who spout zoochosis don't take into account is that humans, while yes, we are animals, are complex animals. I know a lot of people are just like, you see, the only difference between like humans and other animals is that we try to make ourselves think that we're better than other animals. And it's like, not really, because like, you know, you're not finding a lot of animals like people. Like, don't get me wrong, humans do a lot of like animal like things because we're animals, but you know, there's certain things that you're not going to really see a certain animal do. For example, an animal can know that it's sick, and an animal might try and do things to make sure that it's, you know, lessen the effects of being sick. However, like, let's use this for an example. An animal breaks its leg. The animal doesn't really know what to do with the broken leg because the animal does not have medicine. It doesn't really know what to do. All it can really do as a solution is like lick its wound and hope for the best. But even we know it's not going to be good. But if we look at like humans, it's like we see a problem, we find solutions, and then we keep implementing on those solutions. And then we look back at our ancestors and are just like, okay, well, how do we improve upon this? You know, an animal knows death. in a sense. Like, it knows that if it gets caught, something bad is going to happen. But an animal is not exactly questioning, is there a hell or a heaven? Animals aren't exactly making things to worship. Animals aren't personifying objects or nature or things of that sort. Animals aren't looking up at the stars and thinking, how do we get up there? You know, that's like a very human thing to do. It's very complex. Like, hearing people say things like, it's on the one hand, it's like you get it, but it's also at the other hand, it's like, you're very overly generalizing and overly simplifying very complex issues. It's like when I hear people like say, you know, everything is just pretend, everything's invented, and it's like, to an extent, some things, yes, were created. They were just like a created thing. For example, I'm down for currency, not in like a capitalism way, but in like it's a pretty decent thing to have. I know a lot of people like to talk a big talk about trading and bartering, but it's like at the same time, trading and bartering has like its downsides because there's only so much you can trade and barter. If you don't grow enough crops, what are you going to do? What are you going to trade if you can't grow certain crops? So I think currency is like a good way of like, you know, mitigating that by being like, okay, well, if Sam has like a bad stock, well, he can just use this currency thing to buy stuff instead, you know, to make things like a little easier. We can like do things like that. I think commerce and currency aren't awful. I just don't like how like we use it. If that makes sense. I'm hoping that I'm making sense here. I'm all over the fucking place, but I'm hoping that there's a general idea of what I'm trying to say. Like, there's a lot of complexities and nuances that, well, people on TikTok don't like to discuss. It's like so hard to like have that type of discussion of like, okay, well, I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, you kind of have to understand certain things. There's a lot of dangerous rhetoric, I think, that gets like pushed around. There's this weird infantilization of like older civilizations where it's like, well, they just did this and the other. And it's like, no, they also had their own complexities, their own things that they did. Like, I hate this whole thing, especially with zoochosis, where it's like, well, they wouldn't have education, we wouldn't have work. And it's like, no, a lot of civilizations still made languages. They made writing. I mean, like, let's be honest here. How many animals are you seeing, like, writing? It's not super common. You're not gonna see an animal like grind up a certain material, make the utensils to like paint, and then make a canvas. Like, that's a lot of stuff. Like, you know, not a lot of animals are gonna do that. You're not gonna see an animal try and like find a little bamboo shoot, make little holes into it, and then start playing it to make music. That's not super common. But, you know, I mean, music is pretty intrinsic though. But anyway, getting back on track, if we even have a track laid down. But it's a very weird thing, and like, I can't believe I've been ranting about this for almost 20 minutes, but like, you know, it really just, I guess, grinds my gears, I guess. It's like such an oversimplification of like humans and human society. Like, humans are complex. I think to just solely boil down everything that we're going through as like, just, you know, we're all just suffering mass psychosis, and it's like, I mean, I could easily say that about religion. No one's gonna like me for saying that, but it's very true. It gets this very weird, like, back to nature, zero modernization. Modernization is bad, which is like, I don't think it's bad. I think the way we go about it could be better, but like, I don't think we should like fully demonize modernization, because modernization has like helped us out a lot. I mean, humans now get to live up to 100. That was a very, 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 very rare thing back in the day. Like, there's a reason why respecting your elders is so common in like every culture ever, because most people were not living that damn long. Let's be honest with ourselves here. They really, really weren't. It was very rare. Why do you think they had so many damn kids back in the day? It wasn't because like it was for fun or godly. It was because if you had 13 kids, about 5 of those kids were fucking dying, and that's being gracious. Anyway, getting back on the track that hypothetically might not be there, but it's a very weird conversation that comes about, and it's like, I just think it comes from like a oversimplification of human nature, of like not fully understanding what's like going on, because humans, we didn't exactly get a guidebook to how to like do things, which I think is why I'm willing to like give us a bit of grace. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've done some awful fucked up shit, absolutely we have, but like I guess I give us some sympathy, because it's like no one really like gave us a guidebook to this shit. We kind of had to figure it out on our own. And I mean, we're doing somewhat decently, emphasis on a somewhat, really heavy emphasis on a somewhat, but I think that we are figuring it out. We're in a bit of a rough patch. I will say that at this point in humanity, I know with the zoochosis stuff, listen, another tangent I want to go on is this whole thing that I see people make where it's like, we just invented like time isn't a real thing, like we, like the modern day clock is just like an invention of capitalism. We never had clocks before. And it's like, again, that's a nuanced conversation, because time is a very real thing. The passage of time isn't like pretend. Like, if I'm here now and if we go to a later date, like let's say a few years into the future, I'm gonna look a little bit different. Like, that's not saying that time doesn't exist. We just made it measurements. We invented measurements for time. Minutes, seconds, hours. Like, we made measurements so that we could better document time. I mean, look at all of the count. Like, humans have been recording time. This isn't like some new thing that came out to be. I don't know why people are acting like this is some new thing. Like, yeah, we all made calendars. Literally every civilization has a different type of calendar. I remember there was this big debate going on about like this big conspiracy about like, why is it that the calendar only has 12 months? Like, why isn't it based off of the moon? And it's like, because European and Arabic nations didn't base it off the moon, they based it off the sun. Which would kind of make sense, since like you're awake. Like that was the whole thing. Like, everyone was just like, why don't they base it off of the moon? And it's like, because they based it off the sun. Because they were awake during the day. Like, why the fuck would they base it off the moon? They're asleep during that time. Everyone's sleeping. So of course you're gonna base your like entire calendar system on like the sun, because you're awake. Because that's the thing that's out a vast majority of the damn day. So like, you're gonna base your calendar off the sun. And if you're basing it off the sun, that's how you get the calendar that we have today, which is 12 months. Also, mathematically, 12 months is a bit better. I would hate to have to be doing the math for a 13-month calendar. Lots of decimals. They probably just wanted to make it easier for themselves. The Mayans had calendars. China has a calendar. Their New Year is literally later in June. It was a whole, like, we've been measuring time. Not sundials, hourglasses, again, were used to measure time. Time isn't like, the measurement of time isn't like a new thing. Like, yeah, the modern day clock, a bit of a thing from the Industrial Revolution, but like, being on time to stuff, knowing like, hey, you wake up, you do this. At this time, we eat. At this time, we do some more work. At this time, we rest. And then we just do this and whatever. It's like, like, again, I'm not, like, not saying capitalism is to blame for a lot of stuff. But it's like, there are some stuff that y'all are ready to blame capitalism for, which is like, that's a bit of a tricky thing, babe. So anyway, it's been 22 minutes now, going on 25. This rant was nonsensical. It was, but I just needed to get it off my chest. So there. Also, I haven't made a video in a while, so here, damn. I guess what else can we talk about? Oh yeah, editing me. Add this in as a little in between. I also find it to be a bit of like that, like overly patronizing thing that we do with like the Native Americans or like just any indigenous group, where it's just like, you see, they're so spiritually in tune with like the world. They don't know anything about bills or anything. And it's like most indigenous, native, tribal people are like, kind of, they fuck with the internet. Like, even they're kind of like, we can like live with technology and also with nature itself. Like, a lot of Native Americans, like, are like, yeah, we also, like, eat, like, snacks and stuff. Like, I just made a video on TikTok where I was just like, yeah, I find the infantilization of, like, tribal and, like, indigenous people kind of strange. And a lot of, like, people who are Native American and stuff are like, yeah, we find it strange, too. Like, people treat us like a novelty or, like, we're some overly sacred people. And it's like, they're just people, guys. They're people like you and me. They are not more spiritually aware. They're just a bit more connected. Like, whenever I hear people be like, I need to just be interconnected with the world around me, with nature, and it's like, I mean, I guess you could hug a tree, but, like, I mean, how much more spiritually connected do you want to be? Like, I think just recognizing that, like, we're all a part of nature is, like, good enough. And maybe, like, not being eco-fascist. A lot of you guys also have very weird eco-fascist ideas. I won't get into that too much, but, like, that's also something that you guys have a problem with. Like, a lot. Like, it's actually really serious. Like, even other Native Americans, like, comment about this whole, like, yeah, you know, you can still live together with nature. Like, yeah, we fucked up a lot, but, like, I think we can still live together. Like, even, again, Native Americans and other indigenous people are just like, yeah, we can still live together with nature with having modern technology. I don't think that's, like, an insane thing to ask. Some of y'all are just, I'm not saying you're cuckoo, but you're close to it. But I don't know. Maybe I'm not awakened like other people are, you know? I'm a bit of a material girl, not in, like, a capitalism way, in a, like, I like nature in increments, basically. I don't have, like, that all-needing desire to, like, escape into the woods and be naked. I more so have that whole, I like being in nature for, like, an hour or two and then going the hell back home. Really, truthfully, that's just how it is. Like, I went to the beach today, like, literally today, with my mom. Yeah, after, like, an hour being in that water, I was like, yep, I'm ready to go home. That water was staining the fuck out of my eyes. I think you can still see the redness in my eyes because I have really sensitive eyes. So when the salt water gets in my fucking eyes, it hurts like shit. Like, I'm literally blinded for a few seconds. Like, there was one time where I was in the water for so long that when I got out, I literally couldn't open my eyes for, like, a good 5 minutes because it would hurt that much. So, fun. But yeah, I like my bed, like my fan. I like soda. The fake food. You know, I'm gonna post this, like, clip I saw. Again, it gets very weirdly anti-medicine, like, I'm not gonna get into my food science rant. If I do, y'all are gonna hate me. As someone who likes to study food science for fun, I'm not gonna say shit. But yeah, it gets very anti-medicine and stuff very, very quickly. Nothing much, really. I'm going to the dermatologist tomorrow, so I really gotta wrap this up. Take your guesses as to what I get diagnosed with when I go to the dermatologist. My guess is psoriasis. It's definitely gonna be psoriasis. But hey, take your guesses. It's probably gonna be the psoriasis stuff. But anyway, you'll be expecting some videos from me soon. I'm trying to get over my crippling TikTok addiction. I've actually been doing quite well. In fact, today, I was only on TikTok for 2 hours. I know. Aren't I a boss? Anyway, I am planning some videos. Witch Hat Atelier is the one that I'm really trying to, like, put my focus on because I have a trip to New York for Comic-Con and I'm planning a video for the Witch Hat Atelier series, Witch Hat Atelier Kitchen, which is coming out. Well, it's not coming out. It's been out. But I plan to, like, read that over, make a script for it, and then do the video while I'm in New York. And that's happening in October. It is already August 10th. How the fuck did that fucking happen? Oh my god. But I need to lock in. It wouldn't take me too long to read the mangas. It's only like 13 volumes. I could probably get that done within like a day just to read them. I could probably just, like, my plan is I'm going to read 3 volumes, write, take some photos for the manga, I'm planning on also coloring a few pages. The thing that's really getting me is that I am going to attempt to do something a little different with the editing, and that's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time. And I also don't really know how to do it. I've just been looking at videos for examples for it and trying to figure out like what I'm supposed to do. I was so desperate that I asked Reddit. Very desperate. Very desperate. So that's where we are. But expect a new video from me. Witch Head Atelier, Haikage analysis, a lot of Genshin Impact videos. I still haven't locked into playing Genshin yet. I promise that I will. But thank you for watching this nonsensical rant. See you again. Like and subscribe. Bye.